For most of her life, Tamar Braxton learned how to survive by staying quiet when the truth made others uncomfortable. She learned how to mind her business, especially when exposing what she saw would only create chaos. There were moments she could have spoken, moments she could have told the world what she knew, what she'd witnessed, what she'd been shown, but she didn't, because the business she minded was the business that fed her. And survival sometimes requires silence. Until one night, everything changed. That night wasn't loud, it wasn't theatrical, wasn't planned. But it crossed a line Tamar had spent years refusing to step over. Suddenly, secrets weren't just secrets anymore. They were explosives waiting to detonate. And when Tamar finally spoke just a few words, nothing dramatic, something shifted in the air. Phones started lighting up. Whispers turned into accusations. And the quiet she had relied on for protection disappeared instantly. But what no one expected was that the real battle wouldn't happen online. It would happen in a hospital room today. Everything SDOPP Deadwatt started as a routine doctor's visit was never supposed to end with a hospital bracelet around Tamar Braxton's wrist. She had booked the appointment casually, squeezing it in between rehearsals, recordings, and obligations that never seemed to slow down. Blood work, a few scans, in and out. That was the plan. But Tamar's body had been trying to warn her for months. The exhaustion that sleep didn't fix. It's the brain fog that wouldn't lift. It's the dull ache that returned no matter how much she ignored it. Like many women especially. Women taught to be strong at all cost. Tamar dismissed the signs. She told herself it was stress. Burnout, emotional residue from years of trauma, and public pressure. She had been through worse, hadn't she? Still something deep inside her whispered that this time was different. When the nurse looked at her lab results, her expression changed. She left the room, came back with another provider. Voices dropped. Tamar watched them whisper in front of her like she wasn't even there. Her smile faded. Her chest tightened by the end of the day. She wasn't going home. She was being admitted. When fear becomes REL, doctors began running more tests, imaging, scans, samples. Each hour brought less clarity and more silence. Tamar texted her manager with shaking hands, admitting what she was too afraid to say out loud. Something was wrong. The next morning, a team of physicians stood at the foot of her bed. Their tone was careful, their words were measured, but the message shattered her. There were abnormalities in her immune system, signs of inflammation affecting multiple organs. And then came the phrase that broke something inside her: potential reproductive complications. That sentence echoed louder than anything else. Tamar had endured heartbreak, betrayal, depression, loss. But the possibility that her body might take away her chance to expand her family, that felt cruel in a way. She couldn't explain. When doctors mentioned masses that required further evaluation, her spirit collapsed. Not because she feared dying, but because she had finally begun living again. Alone in the ROM as night fell, Tamar curled into herself, shaking beneath thin hospital blankets. She cried until her body felt hollow. Not for fame, not for sympathy, but for her son. For the future she had fought so hard to build after years of survival mode. And then came the silence. No, sisters, no. Mother, no calls, no messages. The family she had defended, protected, and endured for years was nowhere to be found. The realization hurt more than the diagnosis. They only show up when the cameras are rolling, but when I'm breaking, nothing. The unexpected via CITO R3 days later. The door opened and everything shifted again. Vincent Herbert, her ex-husband, her former partner, the father of her child, walked in quietly. No cameras, no announcement. Just regret in his eyes, and a familiar blanket in his hands. "I heard," he said softly, "and I'm here." That moment broke Tamar open in a way nothing else had. This wasn't about the past. This wasn't about blame. This was about being seen when everything else felt like it was falling apart. He stayed, he listened, and for the first time in days, Tamar didn't feel invisible. The weight that changes youth biopsy results would take 48 hours. Those hours stretched into something unbearable. Her mind spiraled through worst case scenarios: cancer, surgery, infertility, life rewritten without her consent. She prayed, but the words wouldn't come. Faith felt distant. God felt silent. She journaled instead. Voice notes, scribbled thoughts, confessions she had never allowed herself to say out loud. "I'm tired of being strong," she whispered. "I just want to be held." When the truth arrives, the doctor returned early one morning. The room felt colder. The results were in. It wasn't cancer, but it was serious. A large fibroid tumor had been growing silently, threatening her reproductive health. Left untreated, it could permanently change her future. On top of that, early signs of an autoimmune disorder explained the years of unexplained fatigue and pain. Tom cried not from fear, but from grief. Grief for all the times she ignored herself. Grief for the pain she carried alone. Grief for the body that had been screaming while she kept pushing forward. When she asked if she could still have children, the answer wasn't simple. "There's a chance," the doctor said. But time matters. That was the moment Tamar chose herself. Speaking without Emeka Yoop hours later. Tamar went live online. No glam, no filters, just truth. She shared her diagnosis, her fears, her warning to other women who had been taught to endure instead of listen. The response was overwhelming. Women everywhere saw themselves in her story. But one absence remained loud. Her mother still hadn't called, and Tamar finally understood what that silence meant. Surgery and surrender. Morning of surgery arrived quietly. No crowd, no spectacle, no spectacle. Just wires, machines, and the weight of everything unsaid. Before being wheeled away, Tamar whispered a prayer not for miracles, but for release, that the surgery lasted hours. The tumor was removed. Doctors said she arrived just in time. When Tamar woke up, she didn't cry. She smiled. "I'm still here." Healing without APOLOGY recovery was slow, painful, transformational. She canceled appearances, declined reality. Television offers refused to monetize her. Trauma, she began therapy. Journaling, writing music, not for charts, but for healing. When flowers finally arrived from her mother, they came without accountability. Tamar sent them back, not out of bitterness, but boundaries, rebuilding what was broken weeks later. Tamar returned home to a life that felt different, quieter, safer. She cooked with her son, sat in silence, and stopped begging for love. That act, begging for love, that hurt to receive. When she finally spoke publicly again, it wasn't as a performer but as a survivor. "Healing isn't loud," she said. "Sometimes it's walking away." The final Tiara months later, Tamar stood in front of a room full of women. No microphone needed. She spoke about illness, abandonment, truth, and choosing yourself even when it costs you everything. She wasn't asking to be understood anymore. She was free, ending hook for comments and retention. Tamar Braxton didn't just survive a medical scare, she survived silence. She survived abandonment, and she chose herself anyway. So ask yourself, was the silence the real illness? And is choosing yourself sometimes the bravest form of healing?